Not all books are created equal. Some of them are great, some of them kind of stink. Last year, I read 59 books on philosophy, science, self-help, so you don't have to. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of them didn't help me that much, but 8 of them completely changed my life. These books helped me build the CTMU media empire and educational system and gave me a deeper understanding of reality and myself. If you want this same deep education and knowledge, these 8 books are non-negotiables. I cannot recommend them highly enough. At number 8, we have The Phenomenon of Man by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And what this is really a synthesis of Darwinism with religious principles, is that it says that evolution is not based on random mutation or selection, but the directed goal or aim towards a higher end. And it actually talks about what that higher end is, which is this omega point, which is that the Earth's collective consciousness is converging towards a point where we are going to recognize the unity of all life, and therefore we will usher in this greater era whereby we actually fulfill the original purpose of biological evolution. And so this is a very good philosophical take on what is the goal or direction that biological evolution is taking us in. And it talks specifically about the phenomenon of man, is that we are not only the byproduct of evolution, but we are actually contributing to our further planetary evolution. So we exist at the cutting edge of our world's development, and therefore we have a critical role. We are not emergent phenomena that supervene on brute physical processes, but we are the process of reality itself. We are participating in the world and are at the very frontiers of what is reality's purpose. And so this is an incredible book for getting past this kind of delusion of Darwinism where we think everything is random, and understanding that there is a teleology and purpose to everything, including biological life. At number 7, we have Quantum Reality Beyond the New Physics by Nick Herbert. And Nick Herbert was one of these people who is called the hippies who saved physics. He was responsible for a lot of what people call like quantum woo now, but he had a lot of really good ideas. A lot of what people are denigrating as needlessly bringing mysticism into science is actually a very enlightened take on how we should understand quantum physics, is that quantum physics shows that the observer has an effect on the system that is being measured. And that means that humans can actually participate directly in physical systems through our measurement. And although this sounds crazy, this is a mainstream view of quantum mechanics, is that we are not only observers, but participants in reality's structure and dynamics. Henry Stapp, one of the greatest quantum physicists, who I think is actually still alive, he's like 98 or something, but he says that consciousness is the key role in the quantum wave function collapse, in transforming potentiality, this space of potential embodied by the wave function, into concrete reality, is that nothing exists outside of that moment of observation. And so this takes us into all of these different worldviews, and it gives a really good foundational introduction to quantum physics, as well as all of the different interpretations. So it'll teach you about Henry Stapp and his consciousness paradigm. It talks about, the idea of that maybe we can interpret this this quantum wave function collapse to suggest that there's a multiverse, that all of these potentials are embodied at the same time in different potential universes. And it gives a really good non-biased introduction. It just says all of these different worldviews that people have developed based on the foundational principles of quantum mechanics, and it uses those in order to educate you really deeply. So I'd highly recommend, if you're interested in science or the philosophy behind science, to read Quantum Reality, because it's a very rigorous take. It's written by a real physicist, but it gives a little bit more of a deeper perspective than you're used to reading from popular science books. At number 6, we have the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, and this was really useful for me personally, because the way that this book is written, it's educating you about morality and principles of religion, but it's doing it in this very humorous and satirical way, is that it's written from the perspective of a demon who's trying to corrupt someone who is on their path of self-development and service to God. And so this demon is constantly giving him different temptations and challenges that he has to overcome. And it talks about how negative spiritual forces can use situations like war or conflict within families in order to drive someone to sin, but it also demonstrates how someone can ultimately prevail over their evil inclinations. So the Screwtape Letters is an incredible book if you are interested in how you can stop falling into these obvious sins or patterns that keep repeating themselves, and you see in other people as well, is that is because you need to be constantly vigilant against your temptations and drives in order that you can keep to the straight and narrow path of living a righteous life. And similarly, a book that's kind of similar, though coming at it from a completely different perspective, is this book called Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And I actually enjoyed this more than his most famous book, The Brothers Karamazov, which I also read this year. In Notes from the Underground, Fyodor Dostoevsky warns about this last man kind of guy, this guy who is just living in his own world, and he's completely bitter and resentful of everyone. He's like this kind of pseudo-intellectual midwit character, the kind of guy you might see on Reddit now, but back then he was just living as a recluse, and he's constantly reliving his old memories of like some embarrassing moment from like 20 years ago, and he completely hates mankind. He's totally shut out. He has like a maid, but he is not interested in participating in the world because he feels that the world is unfair to him. And it's a really important warning for I think a lot of people need to read this, the kind of people who are shut up inside in, just on the computer, on the internet all day and live like are very resentful and arrogant. This guy is exactly the archetype of that, and Fyodor Dostoevsky predicted the psychology of modern man incredibly well, especially for someone at his time, is that all of the problems, which, I guess were also characteristic of the psychology of Russian people 150 years ago, all the more so in almost all mainstream societies today. At number 4, we have this book, The Mind of God by Paul Davies. This is an incredible book. It's called The Scientific Basis for a Rational World. And the reason why it has that subtitle is because it really goes into these problems. This is a physicist's genuine attempt to wrestle with these problems. And I can show you the chapter headings, is that it talks about these things that seem to be implied from science, is that there are certain miraculous elements to our reality that are best explained not by standard scientific materialism, but rather a deeper metaphysical essence of reality. So it talks about these questions of, can the universe create itself? Of what is the role of information in reality? How does mathematics, which is this general framework, correspond unreasonably well to the physical world? Why do our theories have any correspondence to the world at all? Could reality be a self-simulation? And it discusses all of these things in this incredible and beautiful way. And ultimately, he concludes that the world is stranger than it seems, is that it seems as though the world has some sort of intelligent direction. Even though he doesn't go quite as far as to say science proves God, it's an incredibly insightful adventure into these deep questions that plague the foundations of science. And I highly recommend it to anyone who senses that there's a basis for the unification of science and spirituality and metaphysics, and this deeper view of reality that is suggested but not explicitly said by our scientific worldview. At number 3, we've got The Republic by Plato, and The Republic is, for good reason, the most taught text anywhere in the entire world throughout time. Is that if you go to any college or university, the first text that you'll take in a foundational philosophy, the first text that you'll read in foundational philosophy class is The Republic, and it deals with this question of what is justice. That is the nominal subject of the book, but then it takes that question, instead of answering it directly, it goes into what does the just society looks like, because if we can create a just society, then surely we would be able to recognize the element of justice that is present in it. And so it's an incredible work of political philosophy. It's an incredible work of metaphysics, because then it uses, well, what is the just? The just has to correspond to the good. And if you define the absolute good, that has to connect to the ultimate purpose of reality. And so it uses this allegory of the cave to show how the light of the good, which is the ultimate reality, the light by which the one, the ultimate reality, sees itself, is that the good, the direction of reality, as well as that which makes everything intelligible, actually participates and structures the universe. So all things strive towards the good, even though they are masked by a veil of illusion, where only see the shadows of the good, which is the physical reality. And the philosopher's journey, according to Plato, is to go past the illusion, to go past the world of representation or appearances, and to look beyond that and see in this intellectual world this vision of the good. And that's what everything in the Republic is based on. And if you're looking for one philosophy book to read, I would highly recommend the Republic. And number 2, we have Chris Langan's major papers, 1989 to 2020, which I've read every year at least once for the last 3 years. And it's no secret that I am a fan of the CTMU, and this book is like the meat of the CTMU material. Yes, there are online postings and articles, but if you really want to put your nose to the grindstone and understand the CTMU, then you need to get this book, or you need to read the papers that are in here, because this goes into the cognitive theoretic model of the universe. And then later on, so after the introductory writings where you understand this original theory and worldview, then it goes into applying that to all of these different challenges. So the CTMU canon is written in logical order. It starts with the foundations of the CTMU, and then it develops those into how the CTMU thinks about life and evolution, kind of like that book, The Phenomenon of Man, that I mentioned earlier. And then it goes into another introductory presentation called An Introduction to Mathematical Metaphysics, which is basically the name of the academic subject, the study of the CTMU. And then the rest are applications of mathematical metaphysics. So a meta-religion paper is mathematical metaphysics as applied to religion. The metaformal system is mathematical metaphysics as applied to language. And so if you want a deep understanding of religion and language and quantum mechanics and reality from the perspective of the CTMU, there is no other book that you can read other than this one. My number one recommendation for anyone who is really on this path of learning about reality is to read their religious scripture. And I'm not going to judge or say which religion you should belong to, because I believe that all religions are interpretable within the CTMU's logical structure, which means that you should go really deep into your religious text and think about how these beliefs, how these stories apply to your understanding of reality. And the CTMU is structured uniquely such that if you read your religious text and you have the correct foundational framework, then you will be able to serve God both in correct belief and correct action. So by reading scripture, you are coupling your moral action with metaphysical understanding. This is the best thing you can do to develop yourself to live a teleological lifestyle, which means a purposeful life that is in line with service to God. So this can be, I have here the Christian Bible, the Hebrew Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, whatever it is that is your religion that you belong to, you should strive to understand and appreciate that. And then you can also later read the texts of other religions as well. So my top 2 recommendations are understanding the CTMU and then understanding your religion, how you can apply those insights to your own personal life and practice. And just those 2 elements, representing respectively logic and faith, will absolutely transform your life. This is the number one thing you can do to develop yourself is education. And not just generic education, not just getting a college degree, but really being able to understand and apply the foundational language of reality and then use that to serve God and to serve others. Thank you. Let the light shine forth in the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.